If I asked you, what was some of the hardest jobs in America today? You'd probably think of coal miners, jet fighters, brain surgeons, congressmen. What? No. How did that get in there? No, cancel the last one out. That's not a tough job. That's just that's for a different topic for another day. We won't discuss that today. But one of the things that you probably wouldn't think of, and that is probably the hardest job that you're ever going to do, is parenting. That's right. Being a simple parent is one of the most difficult jobs that we have in our lifetime. First of all, it comes with no manual. When my wife was pregnant with our first daughter, I expected that, after the labor and after the delivery, after she came out, Chayalei, a beautiful little baby, everything else, I thought a manual would slip out too. This is what you do, day 1, day 5, week 1, month 1, year 1. It doesn't happen. So what do? You work on what you know before, your parents, how they trained you, your grandparents, how they trained your parents, and that's the problem. Because most people are kooky and a little wacky, and that's because their parents trained them to be a little kooky and wacky. And as a matter of fact, you may be a little wacky too from your parenthood. If you notice that in the Bible this week, Isaac and Rebekah, after many years of marriage, not having any children, prayed desperately to God to give them a little child. And guess what? God doesn't only bless them once, He blesses them twice. Rivka is carrying twins. These twins were some pain. It was hurting from morning to evening. So she decided she's going to go check it out by the leading rabbis or prophets of the day. And the prophets told her that you not only have 2 physical twins that you're carrying, you actually have the beginning of 2 nations. Where one nation is going to grow, the other nation will diminish. When the other one is growing, the other one will diminish. And that's why there's this constant battle going on within inside of you. Rivka understood that and took it and left and gave birth to 2 small little boys. The first one that came out was all reddish. Now, I've explained to you beforehand, I'm not sure if you remember this, but in the Bible generally, our heroes are superheroes. They're never just regular guys. There's always something extra special about them. And the anti-heroes, the villains, you can't say a good word about them at all. So the first one that comes out, they name him Esav. He's all reddish with a red beard. He is like, could you imagine that? Little red bearded kid coming out of your womb? He's like, of course, going to end up being the villain. Behind him comes beautiful little Jacob holding on to his brother's leg. And he comes out and he's given the name Yaakov. And these 2 brothers grow up. One of the saddest verses in the Torah, I think, is when it comes to say that Jacob was loved by Rivka and Esav was loved by Isaac. Now, why do I think that's a sad verse? That's just the reality. Isaac loved Esav because he fed him, he hunted for him, he delivered food for him. And Jacob was a mama's boy. He stayed home, he was in the tent, he studied all day, he was a good boy, never gave his mother any trouble. So why would it be problematic to say that Isaac loved Esav? He was the hunter, he was the guy outside, type A personality, rugged. Because generally, if you have a multiple number of children, generally the rule of thumb is you got to be equal-handed, even-handed with them. You can't show favoritism. If you show any amount of favoritism to one child or the other, all that is going to leave is a recipe for disaster. Now, I'm sure that Isaac and Jacob, being the patriarchs and the matriarchs of our nations, had great intent. Isaac wanted to save Esav, he wanted to bring him a little closer, maybe direct him in the right paths, and I understand all of that. But when it comes to parenting of our own children, number one thing is you have to have a little bit of patience. That is probably the most important ingredient of all that you're going to need when you're raising a child. Because your children are going to challenge you to the end. Everything that you hold to be true and moral and noble is to them ugly, disgusting, and useless. Like when I was growing up in Montreal in the middle of winter, I wanted to go out without a sweater. My mother said, how could you then go out without a sweater and a coat and a jacket and a hat and fur and boots and this and that and that? And I thought to myself, my mother is so overbearing. But what I found out clearly enough is when I had a child and they go out, I want them to do the same thing that my mother wanted for me. But it took a lot of patience for me to really understand that. Because your children are going to think that you're of diminished mental capacity. Now maybe you are. I don't know you. and it is very possible that you're not a good parent. But even if you're the greatest parent, your children by nature are going to challenge you. When they're little, it's going to be little challenges. And when they're teenagers, when they start talking to you in monosyllabic tones like, what, when, who, yeah, then of course you're going to have a different type of patience you're going to need. The next thing you're going to need, and this is just from my own perspective, is a sense of humor. You're going to need to be able to laugh both at yourself and at the situation. Because if you take everything so seriously, every time your child disobeys you, every time your children get into a fight, every time you do this, you're not going to last long, and they're going to know that. So my advice for you today is young parents out there in the world, and even if you're not so young parents out there in the world, is number one, patience. If you don't have it, buy it. Find it in a store, in a catalog, online, on the internet, whatever it costs you, get some. And while you're buying patience, also write out a check for a sense of humor. Because if you don't laugh every single day, you're going to end up crying at night. And it's not healthy, not for your heart, not for your kidneys, not for your liver, not for your spouse, and not for anybody that's living within 27 miles of your residence. And that is my little piece of advice for today. It's all about the perils of parenting, and I'm sticking by my views. Have a great day and see you next time.